Guys, William Faulkner is one of the greatest novelists of all time, and today I'm going to share with you guys the most profound quote on writing that William Faulkner ever shared. Because in the playlist down below, you will find countless other videos I have done on Faulkner's books, his life, and his writing philosophy. But I think that this one is the most important. This is the one that we need to kick off this year, 2025, when the literary renaissance is going to kick into hyperspeed and change the publishing industry. Because here on Right Conscious, we have not given into pessimism yet. We have not given up on actually creating the educational and spiritual awakening through literature that William Faulkner is about to talk about right now. Our tragedy today is a general and universal physical fear so long sustained by now that we can even bear it. There are no longer problems of the spirit. There is only the question, when will I be blown up? Because of this, the young man or woman writing today has forgotten the problems of the human heart in conflict with itself, which alone can make good writing, because only that is worth writing about, worth the agony and the sweat. He must learn them again. He must teach himself that the basis of all things is to be afraid, and teaching himself that, forget it forever, leaving no room in his workshop for anything but the old verities and truths of the heart, the old universal truths lacking which any story is ephemeral and doomed, love and honor and pity and pride and compassion and sacrifice. Until he does so, he labors under a curse. He writes not of love but of lust, of defeats in which nobody loses anything of value, of victories without hope, and worst of all, without pity or compassion. His griefs grieve on no universal bones, leaving no scars. He writes not of the heart but of the glands. And guys, that may be the most impactful quote I have ever shared on this channel. That Faulkner there is saying everything that I've tried to say across hundreds of videos. And if we return to the start of the quote, Faulkner talks about the nuclear bomb, the ultimate symbol of anxiety and masculinity and power gone wild, especially in Faulkner's age. But what really matters is not the symbol, but how the symbol creates causal factors that eventually manifest into symptoms within the artist. And Faulkner said this quote back in 1950. And so maybe we could dismiss it as not relevant. But I would ask you guys today, our readers, our individuals, our artists today, dealing with the problems of the human spirit, with the human heart, more or less than they were before technology and social media. And this new phase of globalization affected all of us, because many people are doing pseudo heart-based writing or pseudo transformative writing. They think that by talking about their emotions or about their story or about their experience that involves some form of tragedy, that they are dealing with the heart, that they are dealing with the spirit. But when you are dealing with the spirit, when you are interacting with the universal creative energy, you are standing in reverence before it, or in an angry exultation, trying to find a sliver of it to put into your work. And when I look at most modern pieces of art and writing, I do not see that. And I love when people say below my videos, there's always a comment, all you have to do is just write, and everything will take care of itself. And I agree that you need to put over 10,000 hours in the chair if you want to be a good writer. But what about the rest of your life? Because most of us don't have a reality where we can spend 16 hours a day just writing 7 days a week. How are you going to live outside of that? What are you going to do in every other situation? How are you going to react to the world and art and relationships and your own personal journey toward death? What frames, what perspectives are you going to bring to the table? And most of us are bringing faulty perceptions and perspectives to art that have no source in spirit, because most people don't even believe in the deep problems of the heart, the deep connection to the spirit that an artist should have. And those numbers of logic bros are increasing every single day. And this is what many non-writers don't understand. You sit and read a novel and you're like, wow, I understand that's hard and it takes a lot of work, and you view it as kind of a skill issue. If I sit down and practice, then one day I can do that. But in actuality, the novelist, the writer, is a shaman who is working with energy and has transcended logic and rationality, has transcended interpretation and criticism. And most of all, as Faulkner is talking about, they transcend fear. not the fear of criticism or what other people are going to think, but fear within their own heart. And when you look at the amount of polarization that is within the world today, that is fear. When you look at social anxiety or whatever mental health issue people have, all of that is rooted most of the time in fear and in trauma. And if you are going to even redirect that suffering into something else, then you are at some level going to have to get over that and own it, or at least be in a constant battle with it that hopefully you win. But what's really interesting is that many of the ailments, many of these mental manifestations that people have are not genetic, and they aren't necessarily existent in the past except in like outliers, because many of these ailments are manifestations of this terrible civilization that we have built. Because yes, we have a beautiful GDP, the biggest one. We got the biggest phallus. We got the biggest GDP of all here in America. Yes, we have changed the world and economically mobilized people. But what of the heart? What of the spirit? What has happened to that through our civilizational conformity that has been pressed upon us through our loss of freedom? There's a whole new set of problems that people are dealing with. And it's not that we just have problems. It's structural. I literally am looking out at an HOA neighborhood right now. I live within the maze. I live within the maze of social media and my past programming and my reactions and experiences with everyone else that has also been within the system. And things like adventure and exploration and freedom in nature and being and living untouched without technology, those things don't exist anymore for most people, unless you were living somewhere crazy. And so most of the authors behind me had the opportunity to do that. They had access to all that: adventure, love, suffering, despair, silence, isolation, not constantly needing to be entertained. That's something that all these other authors tapped into. Most of us maybe are tapping into that now, but after how long? How many years of watching TV as a kid or doing all these other things did you experience? How many years of deprogramming are you going to need to have to go through with to start to tap into those causal levels of fear? And this is what many people in, psychology or the New Age movement calls shadow work. But I think shadow work is very important if you are going to actually start writing something that is transformative. Because as Faulkner is saying here, why would you write anything else? Why would you waste time creating anything or forcing someone or telling someone to consume your art if it isn't going to transform their life in an immense way? And someone today called that opinion that I just shared elitist and pretentious. But that's called having a higher standard. That's called trying to create a movement called the literary renaissance, where independent people have the confidence to actually share their work and make an impact. And it takes a certain level of hubris, because if you can't write something transformational, let's say you just don't have the ability or you're not good enough, then you can elevate other people who have. You could sit and translate other people, or you could make a YouTube channel and talk about other authors or directors or whatever, and help build other people up. And listen to these words, guys: love, honor, pity, pride, compassion, sacrifice. When I think of my own life, I try to live some of those principles. I have, lived through some of those. But our culture, our symbols, the cornerstones around us are non-existent. How many honorable individuals do you know under the age of 30? How many people do you know that are deeply in love? I mean, I could go through every single one of these, you guys. The declining birth rate, the declining marriage rate, the declining of even people just hooking up and having sex is terrible. We're no longer connecting with each other as friends. And what's even more insane is the rate of teenagers. Millennials and older people are still maintaining that. But as a high school teacher, the amount of students I have that are dating nobody and have no interest in doing so, and that's just supported by statistics that there is a dramatic decline in teens even just hanging out with their friends twice a week, is insane. Like a lot of my students go home every day and play OG Fortnite or look at TikTok and never hang out with anybody outside of school. They have school friends and that's it. And these kids aren't weird. These are kids who even 5 years ago or 10 years ago would be hanging out with their friends 5 days a week. And it's so crazy. And I'm going to talk about technology a little bit later tonight. Martin Heidegger's thoughts on technology. So go check out that video. But how pervasive technology is, now parents and grandparents and everyone is obsessed with technology. And people don't like feeling like hypocrites. Hey, you need to go out and make friends, but I don't have any friends. And I sit and, watch Netflix every single night. And so love is gone. The love of friends, the love of pets. It's crazy. I'm sure most of you guys walk your dog. at least once a day. And if you don't, then what the fuck is wrong with you? But many people do not. Most people don't. Most people don't play with their cats or actually interact with their animals. They have no basis of love. And at the highest level, the deepest form of love is the love of the divine, even the love of the self. And once again, all the pessimists out there aren't even tapped into that, which is insane. So if you aren't, if you don't understand love at a deep level, why would I want to read anything by you? And I'm not saying you have to be married, but just any of those aspects of love I'm talking about. If you aren't a bhakti writer, then you're just saturation. And down below in the comments, like, is that too harsh, you guys? Like, honestly, why would you click on a video from writing advice from William Faulkner unless you were trying to reach the standard of the greats? And it's not like you need to reach it either. Like, guess what? A lot of you guys, and maybe myself included, am going to try to reach that level. And maybe I'm going to fall short. Maybe I'm not going to write the transformative masterpiece or something like that. But that is the goal. That is what I am trying to do. And if I fail, then I fail. But I will be a stepping stone for others to move forward. My failures will become fuel, but most of the shit that people write is fueling nothing. It is building upon nothing. It is just an isolated incident that we have to call art to make people feel good. It's these weird Kantian or neo-Kantian like New Age principles. Everything is art. There is no quality. This weird moral relativism like just sneaking its way into so many different things. And so let's talk about honor. Honor is something that at some level has never existed in the world, but it has. Obviously, many of the more extreme honor cultures like Bushido in Japan or even in the Middle East or in other places are not great. But our civilization that has no accountability or honor and has slipped so far down the cracks that, I don't care what incident it is. You could find some daily incident on Fox News where people are saying, oh, look, people aren't helping someone on a subway, or just things in your own hometown. I have witnessed people being hurt before and people walking by them and not helping them. I'm not talking about a homeless bum, but like a real individual who needed help and people just walk by them. Where is the honor in that? At a different time, your head would get chopped off for that. We have no relation or no connection to anybody, and that is the basis of honor, that your reputation is everything. And what's funny is that being on the internet is something that has really made me think deeply about honor and reputation, because if you are Mr. Joe Schmo that works at Raytheon or works just a rando job and you're not online, and you could be an anonymous poster, you can do whatever the fuck you want. You can screw people over and just move around and nothing is ever really going to happen to you, most likely. But everything that I've put out online is archived, my greatest wins and my greatest mistakes. And there are times I sit and I say, like, that isn't what a man would have done. That wasn't an honorable thing to do. And like that, you took things way too far there. But most people don't have that check and balance for their personality. Another weird one that's in this list is pity. So Faulkner evokes the word pity. And I think that we've become so desensitized that most of us don't feel any pity. And the people who are pitiful or that, display pity, we kind of see as virtue signalers, like people like crying about the homeless and this. And like I said, maybe I'm so desensitized that I don't get them. But when I look at the people that freak out about problems in the world, most of the time it's kind of a psychological projection. And that's sad though, because there was once a time, and when you were young, you're supposed to be an idealist. You're supposed to be doing things. You're supposed to be trying to create real change. And a lot of that time that manifests from pity. And even better, here's a cool thing, that if you are actually living your life, you are going to do pitiful things. There were some times in my life that I was unhinged or off the rocker or just not living a purposeful and conscious life. And in terms of my true potential at that time, it was pitiful. But those times, me falling into that type of mentality, if you combine that with a growth-oriented mindset, is the ultimate fuel. I never want to go back there. And that's what's sad about kind of the A to death conveyor belt that we are putting in the Western world. We grow up, we have stop signs, we have perfect right angle roads. Everything is perfectly laid out for us. You go to college, you get the job, you get married or don't get married, and then you die and cash in your 401k, yada, yada, yada. And the avenues for pity are so weird. Like, I joined a fraternity or sorority and I got a DUI. Like, oh, poor you. And even the people that get the DUIs or like, screw up when they are young, most of the time don't have a growth-oriented mindset and can't use that as a contrast. Because if you are in general closed-minded and not doing something to grow and awaken to spirit or higher consciousness or the deeper levels of yourself every single day, then you are basically stagnant and you have no control over your character and where it is going. And pride, this is an interesting one, because from what I know about pride is that it's very easy in our modern society to be prideful. I could sit here right now and be like, yo, I got 25K subs, like, oh, look at me, yada, yada, yada. And I could be prideful and I could like do stuff like that. And I could, tap into that energy. And it's all fake though, you guys. Me having 25,000 subscribers on here and, everything that I've built, even though I adore it and, I'm very happy for all you guys being here, it's not real. It's this weird pixelated scaling mechanism through the medium of YouTube that has granted me access to your ears right now. But I should be proud. But going back to an earlier idea, we have created this weird civilization where it's very easy to be prideful. It's very easy to gain all these accomplishments and accolades and have a comfortable life and house and your dopamine system. You're eating chips in your nice shelter and there's no animals because we killed them all. We all feel prideful. But what of the classic pride? What of the pride, of Achilles? What of the rage of Achilles? These types of emotions are, in the classic sense, much different than Logan Paul or Jake Paul being prideful. And coming back to compassion, once again, if you are a logic bro, if you are like the rest of us and you were raised in this reality, then logic is your main framing of reality. And you think that you have to compete with that. You think that you have to apply that to every aspect of your life because our society rewards rationality. It's built on that. And with Augustine and Aquinas integrating Aristotelian logic and principles into Christianity, it's the basis of our spirituality also. And so, just like Faulkner was saying that you can't tap into creativity with fear, you can't tap into compassion with logic. They don't work together. And compassion moves into sacrifice because there are no longer people making real sacrifices. Like, yes, people make sacrifices for their family and do these things, but the real sacrifices, the big time sacrifices, because once again, an air of pessimism has been programmed into us by the machine. We are living in a prison, on a prison planet, in a prison civilization right now. And so we all know that if I go right now and I go to Raytheon or some other, what I think is a corrupt organization, and I go protest and get arrested or make a sacrifice to create change, that wouldn't be useful at all. Who thinks Luigi Mangione killing that healthcare CEO is actually going to do anything? Yes, the healthcare industry in America is very corrupt, but offing a CEO isn't a sacrifice. And so this is a pretty big of a mind scrambler for a lot of people because martyrdom is kind of ingrained within us. And so, being a champion, doing something great, helping others, and being selfless is programmed within us. And, there are less and less opportunities to do that now, especially in a celebrated way, because it's so weird, you guys, because think about it. Think if you made a major sacrifice for your village. Think if you and I were raised in a village together or a small town, and eventually maybe something tragic happened and you decided to sacrifice your life to go and save the town or do something, or you go out into the woods hunting because we're starving and you end up dying or something. That is such an immense sacrifice because I know you, we all know you, we all saw you when you were a child, and it makes me want to cry right now. That's huge. But if I am charitable, or if I go help people, or if I sacrifice something, it's for a bunch of unknown people. I'm no longer around anybody I know anymore. And the connections you can even make in a couple years are nothing because, like I said, the connections that you make in childhood are beyond our conception. If you were born in a small town and still live in a small town, then you understand what I'm talking about. And I'm sure all of you guys can imagine what I'm talking about. But a part of sacrifice is doing it for people you love. And loving this abstract concept, loving the charity, loving that you're helping people with poverty, or loving, stuff like that, even if you have boots on the ground, is still somewhat disconnected. And I love what Faulkner says, until you shed away this logical and fearful mentality, you will labor under a curse. You will write not of love, but of lust. I mean, look at all the writers who are doing that. I've fallen into that trap before. Why wouldn't I write about love? Guys, I have tapped into unconditional love before. I have tapped into the bhakti of reality. I have felt it. Why would I ever want to write about something different? Faulkner says of defeats in which nobody loses anything of value. These little personal stories, if you think of Revolutionary Road, which is a tragic story, great novel, but these little, mini novels are dealing with these insular realities of families or these conflicts. But think of losing something of real value. That's where tragedy stems from. Think of Hamlet, think of Oedipus, think of some of the greatest tragedies of the time, and look at what they're losing. They're not just losing power or whatever, they're also losing reputation and honor and ideas and things they've held on to dearly for their entire life. And if you are a genius, if you are a savant, then you can and this is really good, you guys. Like I've never said this before, but I'm just thinking of this now. That if you are innovative, then you are seeing into the future. You have radical ideas, and if you instill those into a character, then the character has to leave the world behind. They have to move forward. That is the most tragic thing of all. Think how many stories have that. Think of, characters that have to move on from the world. Like that is insane. Faulkner says of victories without hope. Every victory should be optimistic, but even the positive, outcomes in many pieces of art today have the air of pessimism beneath them. And I swear to God, it's like this is my endless quest against the logic bros. I've really been tapping into the last little while into meditation. I have meditated daily for 15 years now, but I've really started to take it more seriously and trying to really ground myself even more and like putting way more time in it than I usually do. And if I used my intellect and my mind and my rationality, I could go down, whether it is political or religious or with gossip in my social life or whatever. I could break it down endlessly, and have just things to think about and talk about on Reddit or whatever, and just continue forever. And there is no hope in that because there is no prescience. But if I tap into truth, if I come into the moment and become still and connect with reality, then I have an opportunity to be able to connect with everything without limits. I mean, anyway, and that makes it much easier to be optimistic because if I use rationality, I would tell you guys right now, we're fucked. We can't do anything. It's all over. And until you come back into the moment, until you can respect the moment, you can't understand the universal bones. You can't understand those deeper things. And so, boom, everybody. What a way to kick off 2025. Thank you guys for being here. Let me know if you guys have any questions. I mean, this is what it's about, everybody. I hope I am motivating you guys. This is bigger than just your writing. Like, writing is important, but I want you guys first and foremost to be conscious. Because if you be conscious, then you can write conscious. And so I will see you guys very soon in the next video. I'm about to record it right now, and have a good night.